Hi everyone, welcome to my channel International Storyteller. In this channel you will find true horror stories worldwide. These stories are for entertainment purposes only. In this video, I will tell you the story of one of the most haunted buildings in Brazil. Brazil is a country in South America that is famous for dense forests, including the Amazon forest. The most haunted building in Brazil is called the Joelma building. This building has 25 floors and is located in São Paulo, which is a city in the southeast region of Brazil. At the time of the construction of this building, it was considered one of the highest buildings in São Paulo city. The Joelma building is famous because a horrific fire broke out in it in 1974. This fire was considered one of the world's worst skyscraper fires in history. This horrific fire took the lives of at least 189 people. This building is reported to be haunted by the victims of those who were killed in the fire. Many people claim to have seen ghosts roaming around the halls and rooms. It is also said that the most haunted part of the building is the elevator. As a result, the place where the building stood became famous as one of the most haunted places in Brazil. But many believe this block of land in São Paulo city where the Joelma building stands today was cursed long before the building was built. What is the tragic story behind the Joelma building? What is the reason behind the haunting in this area? Why is the place where the Joelma building stands today considered a cursed land? In order to know this, let us hear the real tragic story behind Joelma building. The Joelma building was built in São Paulo city, which is in the southeast region of Brazil. The construction of this building was completed in 1971 and opened in 1972 for public use. This building has 25 floors, and at that time, it was one of the tallest buildings in São Paulo city. The building was mostly used as an office building for a banking company with hundreds of employees. After 2 years since the building was opened, a fire suddenly struck the Joelma building, which quickly spread throughout the building. On that day, there were around 756 office employees in the building. On February 1, 1974, at around 8:50 a.m. in the morning, the air conditioning on the 12th floor of the building was overheated. This electrical short on the 12th floor started a small fire inside the 12th floor. It is a newly constructed building and shouldn't have any old or rusty things that would malfunction like this. The reason why the air conditioning overheated was that it used the wrong plug that it needed. Despite the building being constructed with fire-resistant concrete, the fire spread rapidly throughout the other floors due to the flammable things inside the building, such as carpets, furniture, curtains, and ceiling tiles. The unfortunate thing is that the Joelma building had no emergency exits, no fire alarms, and no fire sprinkler systems that would help extinguish the fire. The only emergency exit inside the building was the stairwell, but the fire had already burned it. Then the fire extends from floors 12 to 15, thus filling the higher floors with deadly smoke and intense heat. 20 minutes later, firefighters were on the scene, but they were unable to extinguish the fire completely. So they request additional assistance because the flames move quickly on the upper floor of the building. Those people who were inside the building were very panicked and tried their best to escape from the building. With the help of 4 elevator operators and the long ladder, the firefighters were able to evacuate around 300 people. Those remaining people had no choice but to make their way to the upper floor as the only means of escaping the smoke filling their lungs. In no less than 20 minutes, the entire building was engulfed in flames that trapped many people inside the room on the upper floor. The people on the upper floor of the building never had a chance to escape from the fire, and it was all too late. There were many reasons for the failure to stop the burning of the entire building. Firstly, the firefighters came only 20 minutes after the fire started inside the building. They didn't have the proper equipment with them to put out the flames in the tall building. The ladders they had could only reach up to 15th floors of the building out of the 25 floors. So those people who stayed above the 15th floor of the building were left to their own fate. The firefighter tried to rescue the people on the upper floors of the building by using a helicopter. But the smoke and lack of a helicopter landing pad on the roof of the building made it impossible to land or save anyone. As a result, 20 people died while waiting for a helicopter on the upper floors. The remaining victims from the upper floor and roof saw the fire ladders that had only been able to reach the 15th floor. They realized they wouldn't manage to get down on the lower floors of the building and saw the firefighter ladder as their only hope for survival. So some of them jumped from the building to reach the ladder, but tragically none survived because of the height of the building. On that day, there were around 756 people inside the building. By the time the fire was extinguished, over 300 people were injured, and an estimated 189 people had lost their lives in the fire. Among the victims, 13 bodies were unable to be identified. Their bodies were found completely burned inside an elevator. According to the story, 13 people who were trapped inside the upper floor tried to escape by using the elevators of the building. At that time, the elevator was still working but not functioning properly. They tried to escape using the elevator, but the plan didn't work as the elevator stopped on its way down. The 13 people inside the elevators found themselves trapped. At first, they all died due to the lack of oxygen, and then the flames completely burned their bodies. The part of their dead body remains fused with the elevator walls, and it was impossible to tell the dead body apart. So those 13 dead people inside the elevator were unable to be identified. The 13 unidentified dead bodies were buried side by side in adjoining graves in the São Pedro cemetery. Since then, visitors to Brazil's São Pedro cemetery have begun noticing something creepy. The cemetery in São Paulo was newly inaugurated in 1972. The 13 unidentified dead bodies were buried there only 2 years after the cemetery had opened. Almost immediately after the 13 unidentified dead bodies were buried there, a scary incident started to happen. Many people reported hearing screaming voice and cries for help coming from the cemetery at night. This scary voice let people believe that the souls of the 13 unidentified dead bodies were unable to find peace after their deaths and have been haunting this world as ghosts. The cemetery caretaker at the time was named Luis Nunes. He also claimed to hear the screaming voice coming from the graves at night. He was so concerned by this screaming voice and wanted to stop it. So one day, he grabbed a bucket full of water and poured the water over the 13 graves. After pouring water into each grave, the screaming voices seemed to disappear for at least that night. So he regularly poured the water over the 13 graves, and in that way, the souls of the 13 unidentified dead bodies were able to be rest in peace. Then, visitors who came to this cemetery started leaving a glass of water on the grave instead of the usual flowers. Later, the cemetery where 13 unidentified dead bodies were buried became known as the 13 Souls Graves. Since then, it attracts hundreds of visitors every year. But the haunting didn't end there. 4 years after the fire happened at the Joelma building, it was opened again as a commercial building and changed the name of the building. The reason they changed the name of the building was to get rid of its past tragedy. After that, several people who worked in the building claimed the place was haunted. They have seen ghostly figures wandering inside the building. Some people keep seeing shadows in the stairways of the building. It is said that every floor above the 15th floor of the building is haunted. The reason is that the firefighters' ladders didn't reach above the 15th floor, and most deaths from fire occurred above the 15th floor. A new fire system was also installed in the building. But the fire alarms would turn on by itself even when there was no fire inside the building. This really freaks out most of the people working inside the building. Sometimes the elevator passing near the area where the 13 unidentified people were dead would stop working for no reason. Some of the cars in the parking lot outside of the Joelma building would suddenly start blinking with their lights without anyone turning them on. These scary and haunting incidents led many employees to stop working and leave the building. As a result, there are many empty rooms inside the Joelma building. In 2004, the staff who works in the mayor's office was assigned to work in the Joelma building. But some staff were scared and refused to work inside the building. So before they began their work inside the building, they invited a Buddhist monk to purify the place. Only after that the mayor's office staff start working inside the Joelma building. It is not the first time that tragedy has happened in the place where the Joelma building was built. Earlier, many tragedies happened on the site where the Joelma building stands today. Many people believe the place where the Joelma building was built has been cursed for centuries. So what is the curse story behind the place where the Joelma building was built? In order to know this, let us continue hearing the story. According to some sources, in the earlier time, the land where the Joelma building stands today used to be the home for public execution. During the period when Brazil was under the occupation of Portugal, the slaves and criminals were tied up at this place. They were tortured and killed in front of everyone. This public execution continued until the abolition of slavery in the country in 1888. In 1948, an assistant professor named Camargo lived in a house at the same place where slaves and criminals were killed in public. His full name was Paulo Ferreira de Camargo. He lives in the house with his mother and two younger sisters. He was working as an assistant professor in the chemistry department at the University of São Paulo. At that time, he was considered an intelligent person. The family lived happily until Camargo found a girlfriend named Isoltina. Camargo had begun a relationship with a 23-year-old nursing assistant, Isoltina. Isoltina's mother loved and treated Camargo like a son. But in contrast, assistant professor Camargo's mother didn't like the relationship between her son and Isoltina. The reason was that, before Isoltina found Camargo, she had fallen in love with another man and lost her virginity. At the time, this incident made Isoltina a social outcast. So Camargo's mother and his sisters did everything they could to attempt to end the relationship between Camargo and his girlfriend, Isoltina. During that time, assistant professor Camargo was planning to create a fertilizing system as an experiment in his backyard. For this experiment, he would first need to build a new water source. So he hired some men to help him dig up a well in the backyard of his home. By the end of October 1948, the well was built and ready to use. A few days later, instead of creating a fertilizing system, Camargo told his friends and girlfriend, Isoltina, that his family members needed to take a vacation together. The reason for the vacation was to reduce the tension and recent troubles between Camargo and his family. He further told them that this vacation with his family would be gone for a long time. On November 5th, the family set out for the vacation, but Camargo returned home alone. He told his friends and girlfriend, Isoltina, that his mother and two sisters had died in a car accident while on the trip. The news eventually reached a half-brother of Camargo's named Carlos. But his half-brother Carlos didn't believe what Camargo said. So his half-brother Carlos questioned him about the details of the accident. He even asked Camargo why the news of the accident hadn't been in the newspaper. Over the next 2 weeks, Camargo's story changed from a simple car accident to a car driving off a cliff. This led Camargo half-brother Carlos to disbelieve the accident and inform the police. Before the police approached Professor Camargo directly, they first questioned his colleagues at the University of São Paulo. One of Professor Camargo's superiors told police that Camargo had made a strange chemical that can decompose bodies before his trip. Next, the police questioned Camargo's neighbors. They said the well in the backyard of Camargo's house was very strange since Camargo didn't conduct any experiments. Instead, he sealed the well up to prevent further use in the future. Finally, the police questioned Camargo's girlfriend, Isoltina. She told the police that Camargo had an argument with his family regarding their relationship. On November 23, 1948, the police arrived at Camargo's home. Camargo's saw the police and welcomed them in a friendly manner. First, the police asked him some questions about the recent accident that killed his family member. Then the police turned their attention to the well in the backyard of the house. The police asked him why the well in his backyard was sealed and asked him to open it. Camargo told them there was nothing inside the well and they were free to open it and take a look for themselves. Immediately, the police called some workers to remove the seal of the well. As they started opening the seal of the well, Camargo told them he was going to the bathroom for a moment and went inside his house. The police and the workers removed the seal covering the well. At that moment, they heard a loud gunshot from inside Camargo's house. The police rushed into the house and found the dead body of Camargo lying on the floor after he killed himself. But the most shocking thing was what the workers found at the bottom of the well. Inside the bottom of the well, they found the dead bodies of Camargo's family, which had decomposed badly. This led to the conclusion that Assistant Professor Camargo and his family members never went on vacation together. The story about his mother and two sisters dying in a car accident was just a lie. Many believed that Assistant Professor Camargo found out about his mother and two sisters' plans to end the relationship between him and his girlfriend, Isoltina. So he was very angry with his mother and sisters and found it difficult to control his anger. So he might have killed his family and threw their bodies in the well. Another tragedy also happened during the recovery of the dead bodies from the well. The worker who helped the recovery of the dead bodies from the well had died of an infection. The reason was that he did not use gloves when he recovered the dead bodies from the well. During police investigation of the dead body from the well, they found out that Camargo used a chemical to decompose the dead body. But what type of chemical does Professor Camargo use to decompose his family's dead body is still unknown. Since that incident, many scary things started to happen in that area. Many people claimed to heard a screaming voice coming from inside the well where Professor Camargo's threw his family's dead body. Many local people started claiming that the area where Professor Camargo's house stood was cursed, and whoever lived there would end with certain death or accident. So they started calling the land as the home of the devil. To remove this fear, in the early 1950s, Professor Camargo's house was demolished, leaving the area just an empty land. But in contrast, local people claim that demolishing Professor Camargo's house would only worsen the curse, and that curse will fall onto the people who live in that land. Out of fear, the neighbor of surrounding Camargo's house all left the place. Then 20 years later, many of the houses surrounding Camargo's house were also torn down. Many people start forgetting about the cursed land and murder that happened in that area. In 1972, a new tall building known as the Joelma building was being built in this place. Stories say the owners of the Joelma building had purposely made the entrance of the building to be on the opposite street so that the address wouldn't be the same with the Camargo's house. The tragedy of many dead people in the Joelma building might be an accident, or is it because of the curse on that land is still a mystery to many people.